For Telesur, I'm Cody Weddle in Caracas. We begin in New York City, where the Secretary General of the United Nations, Ban Ki-moon, told world leaders that the horizon of hope has darkened this year. Moon's comments come during the beginning of the 69th UN General Assembly. The remarks were in reference to the deaths of thousands of innocent civilians and the displacement of millions around the world due to violence. Moon called on world leaders to bring hope to a world that may seem to be falling apart.
It has been a terrible year for the principles enshrined in the United Nations Charter. From barrel bombs to beheadings, from the deliberate starvation of civilians to the assault on hospitals, UN shelters, and aid convoys, human rights and the rule of law are under attack.
We go to Colombia now, where within the past few hours, the government and the FARC have publicly released a draft version of the agreements they've reached so far during the current peace talks. What they have not agreed to yet is the issue of amnesty to rebels, paramilitaries, or government forces involved in drug trafficking and human rights violations. The peace talks are based on 5 fundamental issues. The first includes transforming the territories affected by the internal conflict through social inclusion and the eradication of illegal crops. Number 2 is the political participation of demobilized rebels. The third topic refers to the end of the conflict, which begins with a permanent ceasefire and the reincorporation of rebels into society. The fourth is based on plans to promote economic development to reduce illegal drug activities. And the fifth is on the importance of truth regarding the victims and revealing those responsible. And the FARC guerrillas reiterated to Colombian President Juan Manuel Santos today that they call for a bilateral ceasefire. They claim it is a necessary move to advance in the peace talks underway in Havana.
From the beginning of these talks, we have shown our will to agree a truce with the state in order to prevent the further spill of blood. But the negligence of the government is what has led to further battles, such as the one in Puerto Libertador and other regions. To deny a bilateral ceasefire demanded by the victims of the conflict with the excuse such truces are used by the FARC to strengthen politics and the military is a way to re-victimize.
Continuing our coverage for the latest update on the developments in the peace talks between the Colombian government and the FARC, we go to our correspondent Charles Parkinson in Bogota.
For victims of Colombia's conflict, this week is particularly poignant because it marks the 6th anniversary of the explosion of the so-called false positive scandal. Now, a false positive is essentially an extrajudicial killing carried out by a state agent and reported as a guerrilla killed in combat. It was a practice that was driven by a then government policy of rewarding soldiers monetarily for each guerrilla they killed in combat. Now, the people who originally brought attention to this scandal are a group known as the Mothers of Soacha, whose 19 sons were taken away from a municipality just outside of Bogota where they lived, and whose bodies were dumped in a mass grave over 200 miles away. However, since the scandal broke, thousands more victims of this practice have been unearthed. Now, with the government and FARC currently negotiating and talking about victims during peace talks in Havana, it's one of the most emblematic acts of state excess during Colombia's conflict, and it's something that the government will have to answer for. Charles Parkinson in Bogota, Colombia.
And thanks to Charles. Moving on, electoral authorities in Bolivia are making final preparations for Bolivians living abroad who will participate in this October's presidential elections. David Doherty filed this report from La Paz.
The Bolivian Supreme Electoral Tribunal has handed over to the Chancellor's office the ballots and ballot boxes that will be used in October 12th elections for Bolivians living abroad. 2009 was the first election in which Bolivians living abroad could participate in national elections, though it was restricted to 4 countries. Hundreds of thousands of Bolivians are estimated to be living abroad, with the majority concentrated in Argentina, Spain, Brazil, Chile, and the United States. The latest opinion polls show Evo Morales roughly 40 percentage points ahead of the next closest candidate, Samuel Doria Medina.
The Supreme Electoral Tribunal says there are more than 272,000 eligible Bolivian voters living in 33 countries and at least 67 cities. Reporting from La Paz, I'm David Doherty. This is Telesur.
And thanks to David, Argentine President Cristina Fernandez today slammed the vulture funds during her address at the UN's General Assembly. She says her country will not submit to Wall Street's extortion of Argentina's debt. Fernandez says that those who take measures to destabilize a country through debt bond speculation are as much terrorists as those who place bombs. She also says that the vulture funds threaten and harass Argentina's economy by generating rumors and through defamation. She accuses the U.S. judicial system of complicity with the vulture funds, which only represent 1% of Argentina's restructured debt. And to Ukraine, where peace efforts have stalled today, according to Ukrainian officials. It comes after rebel factions announced on Tuesday that they would hold their own elections and set up independent parliaments in November. The announcement came as a huge blow to Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko, who last week said he would allow eastern Ukraine limited self-rule as part of the ongoing peace negotiations in the region. Rebel factions began to clean up conflict zones in eastern Ukraine on Wednesday, removing government military vehicles, weapons, and other debris left behind in the last few months of fighting. Government troops began retreating from the area September 5th after the two sides agreed to the ceasefire. Ukrainian forces announced today that they would remain in their positions ready to fight, calling the Donetsk elections a well-planned provocation by rebel factions. An Algerian extremist group linked to the Islamic State released a video today showing the beheading of French tourist Hervé Gordel, who was abducted Sunday. The group calls itself Soldiers of the Caliphate and says it killed Gordel after France refused to end its airstrikes targeting Islamic State fighters in Iraq. French President François Hollande condemned the killing as a cruel and cowardly act and says that his country's airstrikes, which began in Iraq last week, will continue. Belgium and the Netherlands both announced today that they will join the United States in airstrikes in Iraq to combat Islamic State militants. British Prime Minister David Cameron also announced today that Parliament will decide Friday whether the UK will also send fighter jets to the region. The U.S. entered their second day of airstrikes in Iraq today, but it did not stop ISIS fighters who continue to advance into Kurdish areas, burning villages and killing civilians. Both Belgium and the Netherlands said the fighter jets would only be sent to Iraq and not Syria.
16. We are ready to send 6 F-16 in the division to take part in the operations, but we need to receive an approval by the Parliament. So it's the reason why we are here. We are in a discussion in the Commission, but you have seen that there is a very large support for some actions coming from Belgium. It will be only in Iraq due to the request of the government of Baghdad for the moment.
Former U.S. NSA contractor turned whistleblower Edward Snowden is one of the winners of the 2014 Right Livelihood Award, also known as Sweden's Alternative Nobel Prize. Snowden won the prize for showing courage and skill in revealing the unprecedented extent of state surveillance undertaken by the United States government. Many now accuse the NSA of violating basic democratic processes and constitutional rights.
They all live up to the idea behind the award.
Plenty more on those stories and others at our website, telesurtv.net/English. For Telesur English, I'm Cody Weddle. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.